Welcome to Performance Talk with your hosts, Yule Gordon and Chris Costa, where professionals discuss the latest news and developments in the profession and all areas that affect sports performance, strength and conditioning, nutrition, recovery, performance, and much more. Listen now to your host and this week's guest, next on Performance Talk.
We have two panelists with us today. This is our third edition of our panel. We call it the Roundtable panel. Dr. Hillary Cawthon and Dr. Eddie O'Connor. I'm going to throw it to Hillary. Ladies first. Tell our audience about yourself and what you do right now.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a clinical sports psychologist, so I have a private practice. I have 5 other practitioners in my practice, so we're growing. We work a lot with individual athletes and teams, organizations, just instilling mental performance and mental wellness through the community. And I'm a mom of 4 beautiful daughters, which is a huge part of my life, and an aspiring high rocks athlete, which is new in the past year.
An aspiring what?
High
athlete?
rocks. It's like the latest trend. It's like if CrossFit had a sister, like that's kind of the vibe I'm in.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
Dr. O'Connor, Eddie, how you doing, man?
Hey there, I am great. So I'll say that in a little more enthusiastic than Chris did. Make it a little more believable.
There you go.
But no, things are actually fantastic. I've recently relocated down here to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'd spent many years at least, up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I'm the chief sports psychologist at Atrium Health and serving Charlotte FC in Major League Soccer, the 23XI racing team in NASCAR, and Queen's University, a newly D1 university. So it's been wonderful, the new experience and helping these athletes.
Okay, Charlotte, my old stomping grounds. I lived in North Columbia, South Carolina. So not too far away, about 40 minutes down the road.
Yeah, around the corner.
Yeah. So guys, what we're going to talk about today is anything you want to, as it relates to sports and sports psychology. My question that I start off with is for our audience. It's, what is sports psychology really? You hear a lot of terms. You hear the mental game. You hear about imaging, and that's a kind of a big thing rocking right now here. And so what is sports psychology? Either one of you.
I'll let our president take it.
President.
We'll say president-elect, but yes.
Okay.
I think it is a vast interdisciplinary field that really focuses on the study and dynamics of human performance. And I say human performance because as we've evolved from an adolescent field, I think, to a little bit young adult now in the space, there's an applied aspect, there's a research component, but it really is studying the whole holistic approach of performance and how someone can aspire and work through. And so that can be from an artist to your everyday life to the physical athletic movement. And there's social components, there's the physical and mental and emotional components. And in our field, we have so many different disciplines and specialties where someone may work with a tactile population and others work on the athletic population, and some are in the continuum of performance optimization. And others, like Eddie and myself, we have a training and specialty in mental health and mental illness. And so we work on this continuum of care of how to best treat that individual that we're working with to optimize their performance in whatever performance domain that they're working in.
Okay, Eddie?
Yeah, well said. I'll dive a little deeper into the clinical and the performance enhancing realm. I have a lot of discussions about that, like when does it cross over from sports psychology to clinical psychology? And my discussion is that it doesn't. These are frameworks that we're putting together, and we have human beings in front of us and they are constantly swimming in thoughts and feelings, and they're constantly trying to do things. And that's where I really enjoyed using sports psychology skills in populations such as chronic pain and obesity. As Hillary was saying, we could also do it with actors, actresses, other populations. The idea is, in the most general sense, even clinical sports psychologists, it's the context of sport that we're working in, but we're able to work with the whole range of functioning with the individual, whether they be clinical and having panic attacks, things of that nature, or that they're just fine and they just want to excel and win gold. we're able to intervene at all levels of that performance spectrum.
Okay, so that when you're sitting down with a client and it's a new client and they walk in and you know the first thing they say is, "Hey doc, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm really good. I just, I'd like to score more points if I'm a basketball player, or I'd like to be a little more stable on the ice, but I got a guy for that, or I'm working on that, or whatever it is." So when that person walks in, what's your approach?
Yeah, I'll keep going. I'll say, yeah, I know. And I'll tell you, even when they walk in and they're saying that they have a problem and they're so scared and anxious, for example, and they've got all this pressure, I tell them that there's nothing wrong with them because
Okay.
we have 4 basic human emotions: happy, sad, mad, scared. My friends, how
Right.
many of those are positive?
Right.
1. 75% of what it means to be human means adversity and unpleasantness. And if we have athletes that are thinking that, they have to perform in only being positive, only being confident. Now, I get pushback for this because
I was getting ready to.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I
was
don't
going to
tear
ask
it.
them. Say, "Oh boy, I bet you get some."
I do. Because we've been programmed that you have to think positively and feel confident so that you can play well. And that's problematic. And I think that's creating more problems with our athletes in their performance because it's making them perform in 25% of what it means to be human. Now, I am not saying that stuff doesn't work. It does. When you can truly invest in that positive mindset, have that
Right.
confidence, it allows you to focus, and peak performances happen at those times. 100%. But we can't expect to be in that all the time. And that's where I like to ease the pressure on my athletes.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit. And I was talking to a young man the other day, and I told him it's impossible for you to be. I'm not even going to talk about perfect. It's impossible for you to be positive every time you walk in this door.
Yeah.
It's just never going to happen. But you can understand that that's not going to happen, and then we can work on that.
Right. And that's where Hillary and I come in, and particularly from the clinical aspect of taking some of those strategies and say, well, then how do I interact and perform at my best with these incredibly difficult emotions and stressors and pressures? And isn't that what sports really about? It's not about getting rid of the adversity. It's about performing your best in it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So just to carry that a little bit, Hillary, we understand that there's no crossover, right? The mental performance is with us all the time, or psychological performance is with us all the time. So you have, and I know you've worked with like Eddie, a whole slew of athletes, but there are this spectrum of athletes, from the guy that's supremely confident and performs well, and the guy that's, or the lady that's not very confident, but she always performs well. How do we fix that in the general for athletes when we're talking to maybe a new athlete or someone who's not as experienced with sports psychology as the next athlete?
In terms that they're gonna experience both low confidence and high confidence in their sport domain?
So how do we deal with the differences?
Yeah. I mean, generally, my frame of thinking is I say that everyone's on this continuum, right? We have fear of failure and we have fear of success.
Okay.
And a lot of the athletes come in and they're kind of doing just enough. And they're looking at the side of the failure side, right? They're fear and evaluation, fear of success, fear of failure. And so they're kind of doing enough not to fail. Like that's their mindset. And so
Yes.
even that confident person, right? They might be like, okay, I'm doing just enough not to fail because they haven't really learned how to have what we are working towards. And it's really kind of the trend now of this growth mindset, right? And looking towards what does it take to strive for success? What does it take to optimize myself and not have that fear of failure? It's common. We have social referencing that we do. We compare ourselves to everybody else. Like we're going to have different states of emotion and not feeling like we're enough. And everyone has a not enough button. And so I think our athletes, when I look at confidence, it's all situational in general. I might be very confident one day and I go into a situation the next day and maybe it's unfamiliar to me or I'm just feeling off and my confidence will drop. But if I lean back on my preparation and my mental and emotional tools and the social support around me, I can lock back in, and then one positive impact that I do in that moment could immediately increase my confidence. And so I think we get this myth around confidence being that it's like this
Yeah.
thing that we develop, but it's actually a construct made up of a lot of other things that we have to utilize to allow that
That's
athlete
it.
to perform or that human to perform. And so to
Yeah.
me, everyone's confidence is going to go back and forth wherever they're at on that day. We're trying to build up the skills to allow them to optimize it and not have it impact their performance negatively.
See, that's a great point, that confidence, goes up and down. I think when you talk about confidence, a lot of, and I'm working with a lot of younger athletes down here in New Braunfels, San Antonio area right now, and the question that parents come up with is they're not very confident. They look like they don't know what they're doing. I said, well, that can mean a whole slew of things. I said, I am not a clinician, but with I'm on the research side of psychology. So, but I'm not a clinician, but I can tell you that confidence is not something that you just walk in the door with and you keep it. You have to work to keep it.
Absolutely. And I think, Eddie and I will agree on a lot of these things, and we also will challenge a lot of the norms, right? There are people that will say confidence is absolutely a skill that you teach and can have all the time, and I will challenge that viewpoint. Same way with the emotional aspect, that you don't have to be happy to perform your best.
Okay, so both of you guys, let's dig into that a little bit. So if you can't teach confidence, what is sports psychology? I'm gonna ask the same question we started off with. I'm being the devil's advocate.
Well, I'll say you can improve confidence by other skills that we can teach.
Okay, and what's yours?
Yeah,
The
I'll pick
president put it on you this time.
I'll pick up this fight. I'd be like, sports psychology is there to help you play better, not feel better.
Okay.
Like you ever see somebody with confident lose?
Okay.
You ever see somebody, as Hillary had said so well, not confident and win? It's like one of the biggest things that I do is I try to put myself out of a job in the sense of saying, I need you to prioritize your focus and what you're doing. And everything that Hillary and I are doing are there to help you play better. And I promise you, if you play better, you'll feel better. If you win, you'll become confident. Confidence is a side effect of preparation and outcome. I'm not going to prioritize it because I don't want you to be overconfident. That'll get your butt kicked.
Right. So the I work on the physical side with my athletes. I went into and pursued further education in psychology because I wanted to understand what was going on so I could send them to people like you. So when I'm doing that, I do the same thing. I said, look, if I have to tell you every day what to do, then we're losing the battle. What I want from you is you to be able to understand the basic things you need to do every day to stay physically prepared. So every time you walk out of the gym or off the track with me, you're not going home and destroying everything that we've done. And sometimes that's doing more. Do you know what I mean? They go do more because of whatever they're thinking. So on the psychological side, we talked a little bit about confidence.
Can I add one more thing before you move on to that?
Go ahead.
One more thing that I use confidence as is saying, we have these emotions, even these negative emotions, and we need to trust them. They're there for a reason. These are not pathological and they're not problems to get rid of. If you're not confident, what's it pointing to? To your point, where can you do the work? If you're not confident in your performance in a particular area, well, why is that? Where are you not good enough? And instead of trying to make them feel like they are good enough, we try to help them prepare to be good enough.
Well, and Eddie, I think you're saying, well, I'm pretty sure you're saying that preparation is a critical piece to being confident, because without it, you have nothing to fall back to kind of try to fix where you're lacking.
Yeah, and you can use that lack of confidence or that fear. You got to lean into it as opposed to challenging it. Lean into it and say, what is it really saying? Is it pointing out something where I could actually be better in my pursuit of excellence? Because excellence is hard.
Right.
Like we got to respect that.
Without-
I have a lot of athletes coming in because they've worked hard. They feel like they're entitled to winning, but it's just a comparison game. Like it's competition. That's what sport's about. We're not entitled to any wins.
Right. I'm glad you said that, man. I hope a lot of my athletes are going to listen to this recording when we put it out there, because that entitlement piece is a whole nother thing, and then maybe a whole nother discussion. But
We'll come back next year.
yeah, Hillary, let's talk about you know, that first step for getting the athlete into a I hate to call them programs, but into a consistent, meeting with you. They come to see you, that make them comfortable.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's all about the relationship and the vibe, right? So I think if they're initiating coming in to meet with me, like from the jump, like it's kind of what you said. Like I actually asked them, like, hey, like, what do you know about me? What do you know about sports psychology? And I really debunked the myth. Like I work with a lot of athletes, and some of them are performing so well, and they're coming in because they just want to have a consistent person that can help them check in, be accountable, learn new skills, learn how to grow mentally, maintain kind of what they're doing. And then I do have athletes that come in that there's a specific issue or problem or thing. Maybe they want to be a starter. Maybe they're prepping for college. Maybe, they are struggling with their role in the team and emotionally kind of need a little bit more assistance, or down more towards they're suffering from some anxiety and other life stuff. And they're all in this range. But I just start in the very beginning of like, hey, what do you know? Where are you at? What have you done before that's working? And then as Eddie was mentioning before, like I already tell them like they're the master of this mental game already. They've been doing skills without even realizing
Yeah,
it.
not
Maybe they've
knowing.
had bad technique, right? Very similar to an athlete coming in the physical domain, they've had bad coaching and they have bad form, and we got to recorrect some of that stuff. And so when they have ownership and collaboration, they're leading what we're doing. And we're just kind of creating, like, I mean, I got a cool space and an office, and I like to say I'm kind of hip and bring in my shoes or some kind of relatable
Yeah.
vibe, but it really comes back down to the relationship, and they know I care about them. I'm there for them, and they're in charge of the pace of how we're going to work through that. And I think that's what makes it easier for them to kind of come in and want to do the work.
How important is building a relationship? We know the book answer, and both you guys can take this one, but we also know some of our peers aren't really good at building a relationship. They're kind of they're either too friendly or kind of sour. I'm just gonna be honest.
Yeah, I think that's like we call it like this it factor, the moxie, right? Like theoretically, you have to know your stuff. You have to in my opinion, evidence-based theoretical frameworks. We're all going to hopefully work from the same science, but that secret sauce that everyone's like afraid to share, like I really do actually think it's the relationship component and your ability to translate the theory to practice in a way that's relatable to the person you're working with in the most authentic, vulnerable space you can be in, maintaining the ethical standards you have.
Eddie?
Yeah, I kind of see it in two two categories. Like if I have my office and somebody's coming in, they tend to trust you a little bit more. You tend to have that relationship because they see, they got the degree, we're coming in and they want to fix it. So that's a little bit easier to build it. You can take a session or two, you give them something good and you prove your worth. And I think that's important for us as sports psychology professionals, is like to earn the trust, not just to expect that they have it because we have a degree. And we can do that pretty quickly, I think, with like our outpatients that come in. I find that when I go into teams and they didn't ask for it, some athletes are just there and they're like, who's this new guy coming around? That's really where the relationship building becomes important. Being present, investing in them, getting to know them as human beings, and kind of earning that. And again, I expect I would love for everybody to just come in and start to use the services right away because we can help. But I respect the idea that I need to be around and get them to know me as well as I know them, and sometimes chip away at that so that we can actually form that relationship and help. Those interventions often tend to be a little bit different, where we're not having the one-on-ones for an hour once a week,
Right.
but maybe 15 minutes on the pitch, back down, after practice over here, and giving them tips as they go along. So relationships are important for both, and building the trust are both. But I put it on me to say that, hey, give them the time and the space to, and just be the guy that they can trust.
And I think
Yeah.
to
Go
your
ahead.
point, I'm going to jump in because we've both had the experience of being in office and then also in organizations where we're actually in their space, right?
Right.
And the field is growing to understand what the work looks like when you're in an athletic venue and an athletic space. It's not as welcoming right now. It's not as normalized. Should we have a mental performance or sports psychologist around, and how often? And we're actually kind of usually blocked by a certain amount of time because they're still stuck in
Right.
this mindset that our work has to be done in private and in office, right? And so it is up to the practitioner to hold the ethical space and know when confidential conversations need to be more
Right.
private. But a lot of my work is built around, and especially knowing the organization and the community, but having coffee, jumping in and having breakfast, kind of if I'm in a domain to really be interdisciplinary and like pop in the athletic training room and check in and work. I'm also getting information when I talk to the strength and conditioning coaches and the trainers and like,
I was
the
going
work
there.
looks different. And part of it is our presence and having the feel of when do I enter a space? When do I give them space themselves? When do I allow them to come to me? But we don't have a template yet. And I think part of this is
Right.
where Eddie and I can share, hey, this is good work and here's what it does look like. But you have to check your own ego and you have to actually educate a lot of the stakeholders who are paying you saying, I am doing work, give me time. And we often don't have enough time to prove our worth, I guess.
And I was gonna, the next question was, let's talk about the stakeholders, the coaches,
Yeah.
the organizational presidents, and all those people who want their chunk of time from the athlete or with the athlete. And you got strength coach, you got trainer, they have to be in all these places. And we've talked about meeting them where they are, but a lot of times, as Chris and I talk about a lot, the athlete will give the strength coach, the trainer, the equipment guy, he gets a lot of the stuff that maybe we should get. Maybe the sports psychologist should get. How do you start to work into that realm so you're in their space and they're coming to you with that?
I was fortunate enough to work in 3 different professional organizations. And the last one that I worked in, they were very fortunate to create a space for me. So now it wasn't like me invading a space that was theirs, but they also knew this is your mental performance recovery space. This is what it looks like. And when you're ready to utilize it, here's what we're going to do. But I think it's also knowing what the organization's goals are for your role and having some clear KPIs and deliverables of saying kind of like, hey, what is my purpose? What's my plan for the first year? We'll be educating the first year is going to look a lot different than the second or third year.
Right.
And then just, creating a space that's there. And then eventually you can get to a little bit more structured programming. But it does take time and it takes time to build it, to educate, to spend. But having your own space as well allows the athletes to come to that and know this is an area for the mental game. This is an area for strength conditioning. This is my area for physical training. And it allows it all function well together.
So Eddie, we know it takes time, but we also know in high level sports, you don't always have time. How do we work with that in our field, carving out that time that Hillary's talking about for what we do? Because if we don't have a strong enough, and I say we because I'm not on the clinical side. Like I said, I'm on the peripheral. I like to peel those cards off and send them to clinicians in a heartbeat. But if we don't have that time walking in, and we haven't discussed that time as much as we'd like to coming in, how do we get that time?
Well, one of the most powerful things I found is being there even if I don't have a voice. So being seen, being at practices, for example, as Hillary was saying, in the training room, and just getting involved in those conversations. You never know when somebody might have 5 minutes and pull you aside, but even more so, it's like sort of time on task and time in the room so that they understand and they can see your personality. They can see your tone. They can learn about you as a human being. And I'm finding that that's like one of the best ways to do it. And then once you're kind of around a little bit, then they might have a little bit more of a curiosity. Then maybe you can get, 5 minutes a week right after practice on the field.
Yeah. Okay.
And then maybe by, year something, you're able to get, in the classroom, doing more formal trainings and presentations. But the other thing though, that I want to push on and let the other practitioners out there know that one of the mistakes that I had made earlier on was that this is great for everybody and everybody's got to have this. And I need this time and you don't understand it. I'm trying to convince them. And that's exhausting. I've learned that it's been much more effective for that. If somebody's not interested or if I can't get that time, that I just accept that and say, okay. I mean, if I'm there and I'm getting some, obviously, they're not going to pay you if you're not doing anything. So you'll be there.
Right. Yeah.
But understand that you can't take the time from them. They're going to give it to you. And so for the athletes that are really, really interested, I'll spend more time with them. And I'm spending less time trying to convince the ones that don't like it or don't want it. I think I've wasted a lot of hours of my career and maybe didn't use my time, which is really small, as effectively as it could have been because I'm trying to convince everybody that they need it. And I think I would have done a better job if I had just let those late adapters adapt more late and then work with those early adapters and spend more time investing in them. The idea being that when I do great work with them, they'll tell their teammates and then it'll build.
When I talk to younger professionals in the field, they always allude to a question or ask it directly is what do you do with an athlete that walks in and says, I just want to work on my mental game? Look, I knew I was gonna get that look. I knew I was gonna get that look. From the last time we interviewed Hillary, I asked a similar question and you gave me that look like what? But tell me you don't get those athletes though.
Well, I'd be like, okay, what does that look like to you, right? Like, we don't just have thoughts, right? We have emotions, we have behaviors, we have things. And so, I mean, I'd be curious to be like, what does working on your mental game look like? Now, if you're saying, I don't want to touch the mental health, mental illness stuff, I'm not depressed or anxious. Okay, great. We still have feelings that Eddie alluded to. And my biggest thing is like, all right, you experience an emotion for 90 seconds. How long is that actually impacting you? What's going on? But there's I have 10 core pillars of mental skills training if they wanted to pull that question. Like, all right, pick one of these things you want to work on, right? Like, again, they're autonomous in their work, but I can't understand that question or statement unless I actually ask them, what does that mean?
If someone says to you, they offer that they are not depressed, not anxious. Does that send up a red flag if you haven't probed and tried to kind of ask through to see if you're picking up on any signs or symptoms of that? Does that then go, why would they bring that up?
I mean, yeah, it's an immediate defense mechanism, right? It goes back to the stigma of mental illness that it's like, I'm not this way. I'm not crazy. I don't have anything wrong with me. And so I'm like, okay, cool. But I'm still going to be curious and do my own roundabout way to get back to understanding what is their emotional regulation? How do they handle things in situations? And knowing it might be a defense mechanism, I'm going to have to kind of go and tread differently in building the trust and the vulnerability in that space for them.
Yeah, if I could add to what Hillary's saying, I love that. And I would go into the idea of what are they talking about with the questions. The first ones that I would have, first of all, if they're like, I want to work on the mental game, I'd be, okay, great. For what? Where do you want to go? What's the outcome? And once they kind of say that, then I'll soon questions after that, I'd be like, okay, well, what's getting in the way? And that's my model of performance excellence. It's like, there's always something in our way. And that's what my job is, to help you get over it. And then if they defensively say, well, I'm not depressed and anxious, I'm like, okay, good. I mean, I'm not about the labeling. And as we've discussed, anxiety is one of 4 core emotions. So I know that you're anxious because we all are.
Right.
And depending on how much pushback will be about whether I give that speech at that time or not. But, I like to kind of go in with that agreement and get that yes response as they go through with it. And then just gradually start to, like, that training begins right with that first question of how they're going to relate to thoughts and feelings differently to get what they want.
Now we have a young professional you're working with. And they walk in and we've all had experiences with the new person. And I think you get one of two. You get the person that's gung-ho, ready to go, got all the ideas, and they just want to show you and they're going to push you to let them do it the way they think it should be done because of their reasonings. Or you have the other person who's just scared to touch anything. How do you deal with either one of them? Let me ask that differently. What's your advice to either one of them?
I think for me, and I train a lot, right? I have mentees that come in, and I actually now have 5 coaches that work for me. So I've switched my role as a leader of someone who's not just doing the direct work, or is my own personal brand, but we have a company brand, and we have to believe in our philosophy, and we have to be a team, and we have to work in this organizational system that I've created that is mine. And so part of my job is finding right teammates that can fit the model that I believe in and can represent the same philosophy that I have. And the other part is the stage of change and where they're at in terms of the work and how much guidance they need. And I ask them, how much support do you need from me in the beginning? And how much are you ready to go on your own? But I think it's, we have to have a philosophy of we're going to do no harm and we're going to try our best. And it's kind of similar to how I parent. Like, my husband and I have the same outcome goal for our kids, right? We want to raise happy, healthy, loving kids that are kind humans. How we go about that will be different. We communicate differently, we act differently, but we have the
Right.
same goal for our kids. And so I trust that my young employees or practitioners in the space have the same outcome of wanting their athletes or their humans they're working with to succeed and optimize. They may have a different approach. Some might have all the ideas and throw too much at it, and we have to slow them back down and say, "Hey, like,
Right.
let's not go too fast." And others might be really scared and hesitant. And so we coach them the same way we would work with our athletes and allow them to find their strengths and excel and be
Okay.
that coach for them is kind of my hope that I'm doing as a mentor and a leader in this space.
Well, I think when you go into now I haven't been the youngest guy in the room in a long time, so we ain't gonna even go there. But but I think when you walk into someplace new, there is, as Eddie says, we all have anxiety, and I think your anxiety level is up just a little bit, regardless of who you are. So when you walk in, understanding what the goals and objective and the what's the word I'm looking for, the intent of the leadership is critical. If you've not been given that, that's the first thing you should ask for, my opinion. Eddie, what do you think?
Yeah, you saw me cheering when Hill was saying about we treat them as we treat our athletes. These mental skills that we're doing, you don't have them or you don't. This is something that, I'm sure Hillary too, we're developing them in ourselves and in our own lives all the
Right.
time. And we're still not excellent at it. There are times that it come up. And so I would immediately take that mentee and treating them in that athlete and kind of start saying, okay, for example, are you letting your feelings dictate your performance right here? Whether it be the feelings of that anxiety and hesitancy, or the whole idea that you have this urge and you need to do this because you need to prove yourself. We're losing
Okay.
then the athletes or the organization that we're working for. Like you're losing like the goal of the game. And so I'd be talking with them right away about how to use the skills that you're teaching them to kind of notice what you're going through, engage what's helpful, let go of what isn't, but keep the primary prize on there as well. What do the athletes in front of you need? Because it's not about you. It's not about what you think needs to be
Right.
done. It's about doing the best for that organization that you're working for. And you can do that again with holding back some of that energy or going forward into that uncomfortable space. But the decision isn't about how you feel. The decision is about, what do they need?
I will
Okay.
say, and I think everyone can relate to this, every young practitioner. So I started getting my first paid client when I was a second year master's student. So I was 23, brand new in the field. And my advisor was like, "Hey, like you have this client." Like she knew I ultimately was going to be applied practitioner, like from the jump, even though I was going to go get my clinical doctorate degree. My advisor gave me a client we could pay. It was like a paid internship. And I thought like I was a rock star at 23. I was like, I know what I'm doing, right? And then I go off into LA to get my doctorate, and I'm like, I start my own business, and I was like, yes, I got this down. I had all these clients. Look, if you look at my business model back at 25, it was a hot mess. Legally, I don't even know if I couldn't even have like DBA, like the name I came up with my company already existed. Like I knew nothing. But like if you asked me and you looked at me, I was like ready to roll. I could conquer the world. And I think everyone feels this way when they go in. They get so excited about the work and they know that they have something inside them and someone has told them, "I believe in you. You got this. You're going to be great." But we actually have to humble ourselves, and all of us will be humbled at some point in our field. And it is the general 10 years. I think I really finally at 33 was like, "Oh, I think I got it now." Right. But there's a moment that I think most of us will get to once we get to mid-career and into a professional space. You do get humbled in the work and you do lose jobs and you have to work through that and you lose clients, and there's a philosophical shift in who am I as a practitioner. And you can still maintain the fun. Like, look, my energy, I'm all about the work still. I love it.
Right.
But we have to humble ourselves, and you have to have really great mentors in your life who can control you and teach you and be there. And Eddie's been one for me my entire career. And I'm very fortunate because you have to have people who can be like, "Hold up. Let me just rein you in a little bit, or let me be there for you when the pieces fall," because we are not all rock stars when we first start out at 23
Yeah.
thinking we know what we're doing.
Okay. The Yeah, I mean, I was trying to collect all of that. I was trying to collect all of that because later on today I'm gonna steal your speech and I'm gonna use it. You are not a rock star. No, I'm just
Not yet.
I'm just just a little levity there. But let's move into the space of, since we have a little bit of a segue of of where you are right now and what you think the profession needs from you as a professional. We're gonna let Eddie go first this time.
Well, interesting you say that. Like in recent ASP conferences, I was well. Let me back up. I'm an ACT practitioner, acceptance and commitment therapy, and I totally believe in it. And this is where where all of my philosophy and where I work comes from, about the psychological flexibility. Again, that idea of doing what works, and so taking down the idea that you have to be positive. And I think that I've gotten such better results, and the research has shown how effective that this can be. And I want to share it with the field. So what I've been doing at the conferences has been doing like advanced ACT workshops, and it's been really widely received in promoting that. So it's that science, and what's coming up now in recent literature is process-based therapy. And it's about seeing the athlete in front of us and moving away from diagnoses and procedures, because they don't all fit. Like, we don't all fit in the box. You got to have the individual adaptions. The way I like to say it is that back in the day when I trained many years ago, it was that people were eclectic, and that basically meant they just they did what works, but they just kind of did it like, yeah, I do a lot of things and I'm really trained. And there really was no organization to it. Yeah. And now we're at the point where science has caught up to that idea, and now we can truly be eclectic, but we have a philosophy that we're operating from, and we're able to use CBT here, or mental skills training here, or ACT therapy here, but we know why we're doing it for that person in that context, based on this evolutionary model. So thank you for allowing me to geek out, but ultimately what that means is I think that's where I'm so excited to get the field to be moving towards, and where I'm more than willing to kind of keep contributing in that, because we can see the individual in front of us, and it actually opens us up to use a lot more. One last story, I presented on this just a couple months ago, how I was at ASP and I was with a colleague of mine, and I was basically fighting him on stage because he was doing CBT and I wanted to do ACT, and there's a philosophical difference in the two. And I was like, yeah, we should do something together. And I was up there trying to win. Like, I wanted to and I apologized at the last ASP meeting for doing that now, because I'm like, we actually need both of those. And I've grown, as Hillary was saying, to kind of say, when does somebody need the cognitive restructuring? When do they need to let go? And I want the field to grow in that way, so that everybody's trained at that from the get.
Okay. Hillary?
I'm in a unique spot of where I'm at right now. Part of my work is for sure the direct care, as I talked about, but I've shifted into much more of leadership roles and showing the work. So one aspect, I started a podcast in July, and part of the initial aspect of this podcast is very along showing what the work looks like. To Eddie's point as well, I think where I'm at in my career and things that is missing is we don't often see what the work looks like. And so I interview an athlete, and it's the story shares that is so relevant, right? So athletes that are listening to it, high performers that listen to it, can actually connect to the story shared through my podcast called Highs and Lows of X's and O's, right? It talks about all of their positive successes, the resiliencies, mental performance, and it's just a natural coffee chat conversation. But the interesting part that I do after that for the second episode follow-up is each athlete will give me their mental cheat code, and I actually break down what that mental cheat code is in a short 10 to 15-minute blip, where I'm showing the field and the world, exposing myself of, here's how I would teach this skill. Here's what mantras are about. Here's what resiliency is about. Here's how you would go, a little tip for you to actually use it. So I'm giving free tidbits of talk to anyone who's listening who maybe has never seen sports psychology or mental skills training. Also teaching it, because we don't actually get a lot of modeling of what our work looks like. So I'm trying to show the field, here's how you would teach it. Here's how I would teach it. One aspect. I'm one professional, but here's my vibe and here's what I do. And so I've been showing a lot more exposure and vulnerability in the work that I do, and hoping to build more education and awareness around the field. I've also stepped into a new leadership role for the organization. I'm the incoming president-elect. And so that was a lot of responsibility. I have 3 years to, as much as I've already understood the organization for 17 years and tried to lead, now I actually have this responsibility to represent and do right by our members and the community, and continue to build the field in a space that I think can grow, whether that's jobs, that's impact, that's where everyone feels inclusive and welcoming, because our field sometimes battles of who's got the jobs and what's the right way. And I want everyone to know there's jobs everywhere and there's work everywhere. And we're seeing a big shift in organizational leadership and organizational wellness, and going into that that place and that domain. And so I think I'm hoping to inspire a lot of professionals and guide them and pull on the leaders that have been before me and say, hey, like, we're going to keep building this field. We're going to expand it. There's going to be a lot more opportunities, and hopefully we impact a lot more people.
I think the last time we had you on the show, we talked about the podcast. It was you were getting ready to do your first one.
Yep.
If
Yeah, I
you
was just about to
remember.
start
So
it. And I was
glad-
like, get ready. I got a podcast coming.
Yeah,
I've been
glad that-
prepping for this podcast for a long time. So yeah, it came out July 3rd, and yeah, we're still rolling.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to hear that, because that first, 3 or 4 months is the doozy. We know about that. You're like, everything's new. And, even just kind of getting the background right and what you want with that is sometimes a problem, or the lighting. So,
Yes. We're going to try something new for a holiday edition. I'm going to actually have a panel like you have and see how that goes. But it's hard, right? Getting everyone on and running it. Everyone wants to have a podcast, wants to have a message and a voice. And, I'm just excited to kind of share my own space.
Chris can chime in about this one, but we've learned so much, and we've with doing the podcast and then all the guests we've had on. But as far as just the function of the podcast, we've learned so much because we recognize that there's a whole bunch of people out there, and everybody wants to do a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And yours may look, sound, and smell like somebody else's, but it's not.
Right.
It's as unique and individual as you are or your organization is. So when it gets harder, it looks like everybody's doing the same thing you're doing. Just keep pushing.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
That's what we do. We throw bricks, sticks, whatever, just to get through the obstacle, as Eddie alluded to earlier in our conversation. So we talk about. I got off track a little bit there, but let's talk about the actual conduct of a consultation. When somebody finally walks into you, I don't, whatever model you're using is fine, but how important is the consultation when you're interviewing or interviewing, when you're with a minority, a male or female, if you're the opposite of your gender, just all those things that make each individual different, bringing in all the things about psychology and the consultation itself. Let's just throw that out there and talk about it a little bit. So Eddie's interviewing me. He's never seen me before. He doesn't know if I'm African American or not. I walk in the door, bam. What does Eddie have to know?
I'll be honest, like, this is a scary topic as a white male. Like, I'll start there. It's like,
That's all right.
yeah, I mean, if we're going to be honest, I feel like I've had a lot more microaggressions on me now and things of that nature. So if I stutter a lot here, it's just because, honestly, I'm scared to answer these questions. Now, I grew up in the Bronx, and so this was something that I was in the International Breakers crew.
Right.
I was like, so I'm not the typical white male that gets stereotyped, grew up poor in the
Okay.
Bronx, and my father was an immigrant, and again, I was a minority in my neighborhood. So personally, I wouldn't say this professionally, but personally, when I go in, is like I see the human being, and I think that that's important. And
Right.
whether you're white or black or Latin, whether you speak English or you don't, whatever your sexual or gender orientations are, it's like I see that there's a human being up front, and my life has taught me that everybody's different. And I don't want to make assumptions that if I get another white guy my age in front of me, that he's got anything like me to be the same at all.
Right.
So it's not very scientific, but I think it's a good heart that I want to come in and respect human beings as human beings. And then the difference is everybody has a context. So if it's an African-American context or whether it's a sexual orientation context, I'll see, well, where does that matter and where doesn't it? I have to be sensitive to it. But again, in the same way that another white male would have grown up differently, and he's got or she's got a context too.
Right.
So I respect the differences that are going on, but I don't want to go overboard and emphasize the differences. And I don't want the differences to be a distraction from the reason that the human being in front of me is in there.
Yeah.
I hope that was safe and good.
No, that was
great.
I'll I'll throw a little icing on top of that. I thought that was good, Eddie. You didn't go too far left or right. So I think you're right. As an African American male who has walked into a lot of places first, and folks go, "Oh, you're Mr. Gordon," and you kind of get that feeling. I just kind of what most men want is a certain level of respect. What most people want is a certain level of respect. So that same respect all the way around is what, the Asian guy, the Asian population looks for, the African American, yada yada yada. And I won't go too deep either, but the acknowledgement and the same level of respect, whether I'm a woman, whether I identify as a woman, it doesn't matter. Just the respect. And I think that's what you were saying.
Yes.
Okay. I tried to roll that up in a neat little ball. It wasn't too neat, but it was rolled up.
Yeah.
Hillary?
Yeah, I think, I'm gonna come at this two ways. First, answering your first question, and I agree absolutely with Eddie. Like, they're a human first and foremost, and that's what I'm there for, and that's what I'm gonna understand. Naturally, I think these cultural competencies we have to have them in our own knowledge point, but they will naturally show up or come up, even to the point, like, especially most recently, like, there was a lot of political differences and involvements coming in. And what I've noticed is, like, I just sit and listen to those that my clients come in. They actually have no idea what my beliefs are, what my philosophies are. Like, we are kind of in that going old school style blank slate at that point. And they project their own stuff on us.
Right.
And I'm there to share the space with them. And so naturally, when I've had different ethnical or sexual orientations and the things come up in our sessions, I'll either ask it if I'm like, is this relevant? Or it will just come up and we talk through it and we might own it. And it becomes, because we've created the safe, trusting space to allow to have the conversations happen.
Right.
And I find that my clients are often the ones to be like, hey, this might be too much, or can we go here? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely go here. On the
Right.
flip side, I'm not a white male, I feel, obviously, but being a woman in a space of sport, which is masculine. And,
Right.
I'm going to toot my own horn here, but being an attractive woman, which, I'm going to say that I'm not an ugly human, I have to know what I am bringing into that space and what the biases are about me. I'm not some
Right.
dumb blonde over here, right? Like, I also can't defend and come on with that nature of like, hey, you have to listen to me just because I'm a woman, right? I have to know the space I'm walking into. And I have to know what I bring into the room myself as well, and check those biases I might have or assumptions that I have other people have on me, and just kind of also create a space that's open and welcoming, and then kind of call people out if I have to, or, listen when I need to as well.
Okay. I had a couple of questions running through my head and they ran right out the other side. But anyway,
I was like, oh, that wasn't good. That was like an abrupt okay. like I'll give one call out of my educational stamp.
no, that actually what you were saying was, really threw out a lot of questions, brought up a lot of questions for me. I think that, ideally, when I'm faced with those kind of things, you were talking, Eddie was talking, and I use a little bit of both of that, either accidentally or on purpose. I am working on, I'm pretty easy. So I'm working on being a little bit more intentional as I'm older,
Yeah.
and making sure that I am paying attention to everything, especially in today's gender identification world, or identification world, period. Because I am not, just to be professionally honest, and take a little courage from Eddie. To be professionally honest, I am not sure sometimes, what I'm supposed to say.
Right.
So I get a little bit, I get a little bit apprehensive about, approaching certain types of looking athletes, not types of athletes, not male or female, but just if I get a look and I go, wow, I wonder, well, they'll tell me if they identify, maybe, or they might not, and then they won't feel comfortable with me. So I'm getting better.
Yeah. I think, to the point of all of this, right? Like, if we can come back to the humanity side of everything and have grace and
Right.
just just have grace for people and give people a chance. And we're gonna mess up. I'm gonna mess up. I'm gonna say something weird. I'm like, oh, shouldn't have said that, right? And have enough space that there's trust that you can fix and have a corrective experience if it does go wrong. That's, I guess, my biggest hope is like, yeah, like be open, be curious, but like also have grace. Like we're humans. We don't know everything. We're gonna get it wrong.
As the only non-psi practitioner in this conversation, I, as a strength coach, kind of gravitated towards people that didn't look like me. And I made it a point, I make it a point to make myself known to them so that there is no dividing line that I stand on this side and you're on that side. It's like we're all one team working for the greater good, which is hopefully you're in here to get better. You're in here to learn something, and you're in here to help others do the same thing. And what I'm hearing over this past, say, 5 minutes of conversation is profound in many ways, but it's basic in many ways too. It's, look, respect is earned on all fronts. It's not given. Black, white, brown, red, doesn't matter. We all have to earn respect from one another. We have to show some level of respect, right? Dignity, honorability in our terms of what we use and how we speak and how we interact with others. But we have to have, as what I'm hearing from you guys as psi practitioners, you have to have this objective ear. Listen more than you speak, and you'll probably pick up on those things, right? That may be the key tools to help you out, to better align with that person, better understand that person, where they came from, who they are. And then that gets you, at least from my perspective, that kind of gets you that respect. Some people just want to be heard, right? And they feel like they're not heard. If you're there listening, that's all they want sometimes, right?
Yeah, that's all we want as humans, is to be seen and heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Eddie, let's take a few minutes here before we move towards pushing away from the table, so to speak. Let's take a few minutes and talk about what you have coming up in the future.
Well, I'm super excited. We were in the off seasons for both the 2311 and Charlotte Football Club. Is that what you're talking about? Sort of my professional life? What's coming up in my life?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I just got here, so I got in at mid-season for both of them, so it was kind of getting introduced and figuring things out on the fly. And both teams made it to the championships, so that was or to the playoffs rather. So that was exciting. I'll say that personally for me, I'm going to have to like balance between that idea of not being that guy who comes in and wants to do everything. So I was talking to myself, I'm going to rewind and watch what I said 30 minutes ago, when I kind of come in, but we got physicals coming up. And the idea is, for me to slow down and kind of say, like, to give them as much as they're willing to get. I am looking forward to great things of being able to put in a little bit more formal training. I hope to build the individual consults that I do with each of the teams. And then I'm in a leadership position here at Atrium. And so Charlotte, there's a lot of room for growth. And so not only do I feel like I could grow the program at Charlotte FC and at Queens, and I have some of those meetings coming up too. So I got getting back into my administrative seat and just seeing about what's the impact that we can make. And we're going to hit all those things that Hillary and you guys were talking about, in the sense of how much do people want to invest? How much time is there? And you get all the business of it when it's like, I just want to go out there and save the world, but I need to lower my goals a little bit. So I'll be giving Hillary a call next week.
Talk through it. Hillary?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be building the practice. My big focus is getting my coaches' client loads built up, and keep helping them thrive. I'm always up to something, so I have some things in the work which are pretty exciting. I'm partnering with, I'm a big component of it, interdisciplinary care, right, and having a whole team. And so I found a physical therapist who also has a facility with strength conditioning, occupational therapist, sport medicine. And my vision has always been to have our own center, like in the area that is a high performance center. And I kind of slow steps, but I'm starting a partnership with my practice and this group called Helix in Lakeway, where we're going to at least be on site with them and have more of this interdisciplinary approach. And There might be a performance center coming. There might be land being built. We're exploring some options. He's exploring some options.
All
So
right.
I would love that in a space, because then I could have the practice, but then I could build what I preach, where everyone's kind of working together for the community, not just in teams or organizations, right? It would be like individual athletes, community athletes. And so stay tuned for 2025. There might be a merging of things and creations.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
So guys, it's always a pleasure to have you on individually, and we'll do that again, of course, as when we make contact. But I like to have you on together because and you guys are such buddies. No, like I said, the profession is I don't think a lot of people realize it's unusually, it's small, just like any other profession. It's, you don't know who knows who, and then all of a sudden, everybody knows everybody. But when you guys come on and speak, I think for our audience anyway, Chris may have another opinion. You never know. He's kind of quiet, but but I just give him grief all the time. So the we get feedback from our listeners that, hey, put that mental coach on again. They don't know your titles, but they know what they heard, and they want to know more. So it's a little plug for us in the future. We're looking at a whole bunch of different things and changing some stuff up a little bit. Our basic format will be the same, but we want to get some question and answer stuff going. It might be questions go out, questions, or a search for questions, or ask for questions before, or it
Maybe
might
some
be
live
after,
stuff.
and then we ask you. So we're gonna do a little bit of live stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So we might show up in your building.
I love it. Let's do it.
Might show up in your building, and I might come in with the old gangster clothes on, talking about, where's Hillary? I need to find Hillary.
We're not far apart. We're just up the road. So.
Well, I know it. But anyway, guys, hey, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you wanting to come on the show. Chris, you got any final questions?
I don't. Eddie, Hillary, thank you. On behalf of Yule and I, thank you very much for joining us here on this 2024 Roundtable of psychology, sports psychology specifically, professionals. Our listeners hopefully will really enjoy this show, and I hope they appreciate your insight as well. This has been Performance Talk with Yule Gordon and Chris Costa. We'll see you guys again real soon.